Good afternoon. This is November 12th, and this is Andrew Henderson that I'm talking with today. And we are at Hamline University. We just both attended. Bradley Olson, a psychologist, spoke on tackling torture at the top with whistleblower John Kiriakou. And Andrew is here to tell his story and a little bit about what he's involved with now. Andrew, of course, has the same attorney representing him in the past as I have currently, Kevin Rich of Frederickson and Byron Law Firm. We both really like Kevin, and he's done a great job representing both of us so far. So I'll let Andrew tell his story.
Thank you. Well, I've recently become highly involved in police accountability and misconduct and videotaping police. This started for me when I was living in the north end of St. Paul. I witnessed a man who was being arrested. He was pepper sprayed. And while he was laying on the ground, not being able to breathe, a police officer kicked him in the chest. And this was recorded on somebody's cell phone video. And at that point in time, I decided it was a good idea to start videotaping police officers and holding them accountable for their bad actions. One particular night I came home from work, and there was a couple of squad cars, Ramsey County Sheriff's squad cars, and an ambulance outside my apartment building. I was sitting on the bench outside of my apartment after work, having a cigarette before I went inside, and all of a sudden the two deputies and a individual followed by two paramedics were coming out of the building. They went down this galleyway, and they stopped. And at that point in time, one of the sheriff's deputies started to frisk the man that they were taking out. And so I pulled out my camera to start recording. Nothing bad happened. There was no misconduct. The individual was patted down. He smoked a cigarette and went into the back of an ambulance. There was no misconduct. Nothing wrong by the officers on that part. I just kept filming just to make sure everything was, okay. And one of the sheriff's deputies, Deputy Jackie Muehlner, came up to me, took the camera out of my hand, and said that she was taking this for evidence. And I asserted that it was my First Amendment right to film. And she said if she ends up on YouTube, she's going to be upset. She issued me a receipt for my camera, which included the case number and her name and badge number. The next day, I went down to the sheriff's office to try to retrieve my camera, and they had no idea where it was. She didn't file a report on it. She didn't tell a supervisor, and it turns out that she brought the camera home with her overnight. So that right there violated the chain of custody. She finally did bring the camera into the sheriff's office. It wasn't checked into evidence for about 3 days, so anything could have happened to it at that point in time. The investigator that was in charge of that case recently pled guilty to actually stealing property out of the evidence room and pawning it. So that kind of shows you how the custody went at the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office. I finally did get my camera back, and when I did, there was no footage left on it. Everything that I had recorded was gone. I was charged with disorderly conduct and obstruction of justice. Originally, I was the obstruction of justice was for violating HIPAA, which I cannot do because I'm not a medical provider. And the disorderly conduct was for refusing to show my ID to an officer. This later had to be changed, and I was recharged, with different crimes, or a different reason for the disorderly conduct and the You're gonna edit this, right?
No, probably not.
Oh no.
But that's all right.
And so I had to go to trial over this, and the trial took 17 months to go through.
So the two charges when you went to trial were disorderly conduct
and obstruction of justice. Yep.
But they just changed the basis of it.
Yes, they changed the reasoning for it. So I had to go through this trial process. The arraignments, the pre-trials, everything else, and it took 17 months. I went to court over 20 times for this this non-crime.
And it affected your jobs as well.
Yes,
your livelihood.
Yes, I was laid off from one job. I couldn't find another job with charges hanging over my head. So I was on unemployment for a little bit, and finally that ran out. And I was jobless for a little bit, and very close to homeless. And a local company found out about this and offered me a job, and I'm still working for that company and very happy there. But the amount of times that I went to court, I don't think it would have been possible for anyone working to take that much time off. I mean, could you take off 20 times in 17 months to go to court and, show up at court and, it just get prolonged to a different day? The justice system there is very failed. I mean, I'd show up at court with my attorneys, and all of a sudden the prosecutor from Little Canada would have some kind of some kind of an engagement or something that he had to attend to, and it would just get postponed to a different day. Finally, we did get to trial. It was a 3-day trial, lots of good arguments. The jury deliberated for about a half an hour and came back with 2 not guilty verdicts. So that was a very good thing on the jury's part. It really opened my eyes to the legal system and how much it needs to change. After that, I started educating the community about their rights. Their rights with police. That they don't have to talk to police. That if you're not being detained, you can ask. If you're being detained, or if you're free to go. And I've also taught people how to record police. And there's a couple of reasons that we record police. The first is to capture evidence or to create an unbiased account of what happened on the video. And the second is to prevent bad things from happening, because nobody wants to look bad on camera and end up on YouTube. So it really has a dual purpose right there. I've become involved in many community organizations such as copblock.org, Communities United Against Police Brutality, Veterans for Peace. So I've really expanded my goals from just recording police to changing the system, changing the way the system treats people. And there's many times where I will go to court with people and walk them through the legal system, because it is a very, very scary system once you get in there and you have no idea what you're doing. So I try to help people as much as I can with my experience, and try to help them out.
And the ACLU defended you along with Kevin Rich, and they may be representing you in a future lawsuit. Is that correct?
Kevin Rich would not represent me in any future lawsuit.
Right, not Kevin,
right.
But the ACLU.
Yes, the ACLU would, if it comes to that.
And your involvement now in reaching out to people and instructing them in cop block and other things is because you have seen how it's changed your life and what's happened to you, and you feel it's important to educate people, right?
Oh, definitely. Education is the first step to change. If people are not educated on their rights and also what's going on in the legal system and how people are treated, they don't see a need for change. So education is very important.
You told me something the other day that when we were having lunch about your experience that you were in the Army, and why you walked away, and what happened to you afterwards, and why did you leave? Tell me about the fact that what you said about you saw the fraud and abuse and the military contractors and how they're ripping off American taxpayers. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. Now, when I was stationed in Fort Benning, Georgia, one of the things that first stuck out to me was eating in the chow hall. I expected to see Army cooks, people that signed up in the Army to do a job, to serve their country, and that wasn't so. I went to the chow hall and it was all civilian contractors, and then I started paying attention to other things like who was guarding the base. I expected military police and maybe some infantry to be guarding the gates to the base. It's all civilian contractors. And who was cutting the grass? Civilian contractors. Who was washing the vehicles? Civilian contractors. It was all civilian contractors. Military members weren't doing their jobs, and that first struck a chord with me that this isn't right. This is wrong. This shouldn't be. And I started paying attention more and more to other things, and I found out about the School of the Americas. School of the Americas teaches people to torture. Torture to me is completely wrong. It's you can't get good information out of it. If you torture someone for long enough, they will admit that they're the iceberg that sunk the Titanic. We must end torture. I could not be a part of an organization that would misappropriate taxpayer money like that would torture people, and that would just lie. I just couldn't do it, and I decided to walk away. And I just walked off base. I went back to St. Paul, Minnesota, and subsequently I was arrested a short time later, flown to Fort Knox, Kentucky, spent a few days there, and was released under a less than honorable discharge, which means I lose a couple things, but I still maintain my right to vote. I can still own firearms, run for office. Pretty much, I kept all my rights. It's just I don't get things like a GI Bill, or I can't be buried in a national cemetery.
And I read recently that 40 cents out of every dollar that our Congress spends goes to military contractors.
That's right.
Not the military. That's a really crying shame.
It is.
My dad served he was in 37 battles, and he was a chef. And it is important, he always said, to feed the troops well. And he had his battle station even though he was a cook. It's very important to serve good food, and I bet that's not the case with military contractors.
The food is all right. I mean, it beats prison food, but it very well could be better. In processing food was probably the worst, but the regular food was all right.
So what do you think is really important for young people down here in the cities to get involved in? If you could name, say, half a dozen organizations or things that young people, or any age actually, could and should be involved in, what would they be?
The first on my list would be Communities United Against Police Brutality out of Minneapolis. They do some amazing things. I really like what they do. Of course, there's NOC, Neighborhoods Organizing for Change. Black Lives Matter does quite a bit, and they have a great message that should be spread. And then there's some other groups like Veterans for Peace, Women Against Military Madness, the Anti-War Committee. I think those are all great organizations to get a start in.
And what do you take away from this discussion with John Kiriakou and Brad Olson today? What's the main thing that you're taking away from that?
The main thing I'm taking away for it is when the government does something, excuse me, when the government does something illegal, they don't get punished.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And it isn't just at the high levels. We know it's at the lower levels too.
Yeah, the government seems to have an immunity from the laws that they've created.
Well, we have enough time. We're only 15, 16 minutes into this, so if you want to say something in a little longer, you can, or if you want to say something in closure, I'll leave it up to you, Andrew.
Well, I hope that whoever's watching this becomes more involved in some way, whether it's, simply talking about issues, blogging, making a video, anything, talking in front of their city council, something, anything you can do will better others' lives. So I really hope you do something.
And I overheard you telling John Kiriakou about a site that you wouldn't recommend for filming because it didn't work right. What is that site?
It's the new ACLU app. It's once you hit send, it stops recording and it just sends whatever you've recorded so far. If you're going to live stream video, I would recommend a program called Bamboozer. It is a free program and it streams live, and it just goes right to the cloud, and the only way to shut it off is to shut off your phone. So if you're recording a police officer or other government official and they take off your phone or take your phone away from you, it will still be recording. And the only way they can shut it off is either holding the power button down or removing the battery, so you have a better chance of preserving the video that you've taken over the ACLU app, where it just sends and it stops recording. So you only get half the story. You won't get what happened after you sent that video.
So no Ramsey County deputy could take your film and accidentally lose it.
Right. Yes, I highly recommend live streaming to anybody that's filming any government employee. So.
And again, that's Bamboozer.
Bamboozer, Bambuser.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Andrew. It's a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you.